What's up, everybody? This is Krish Mohan. Welcome to Taboo Table Talk, and these are your pre-show announcements. Guys, I'm going to be on tour, like in person, doing in-person shows in April that I'm very excited about. I'm going to be on tour with Ron Placone. I'm going to be opening for him April 16th through the 25th. Pittsburgh, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, and New York City. So if you are around these cities or live in these cities, because that would be weird if we were only doing shows in these cities for people that live around these cities. What a weird concept for a tour. But no, if you're in those cities, come hang out with us, grab your tickets, and we hope to see you there. I think it's been like 2 years, just slightly over 2 years that I've been on tour. So I'm very excited to be on tour and see all you guys and hang out with you guys and share some of this new material that I've been working on with you guys as well. So you can go get tickets at my website, which is krishmohanhaha.com, KRISHMOHANHAHA.com, or on Ron's website at ronplacone.com. So again, those April 16th through the 25th, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, and New York City. Come hang out with us. It's going to be a very, very fun time. And without any further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Enjoy it, everybody. Howdy, 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 everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Taboo Table Talk. And we have a pretty fun episode with Brian Karem. He is the author of the book Free the Press, and that's what we discuss. We discuss issues concerning the press and concerning journalism today. And, we talk about a lot of important stuff. But I do want to mention this one thing. That there's a point that Brian makes at some point, probably towards the end of the interview, in regards to Biden wanting peace, about the Ukrainian crisis. So the point I want to make here is, one, this was recorded several weeks ago. This was recorded maybe a little over a week after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So a lot of the facts that we might be discussing have either changed or been debunked or what have you. The situation has changed quite a bit over the last month or so of this crisis. And the other thing too is that was a point that I disagreed with Brian on. Because there have been multiple sources that have come out to show that Biden is not trying to negotiate peace with Russia, which would include a de-escalation from NATO, a pledge that NATO is not going to expand into Ukraine, a neutrality pledge from Ukraine as well in regards to what's been happening with the Cold War and everything. I apologize. There's a puppy, very anxious dog in the background. So if you guys heard that, that's what that was. It took me away for a moment, but. Point being, Ukraine should have a neutrality agreement because this is geopolitics we're talking about, right? And history does matter, and there is a history of antagonism between the United States and Russia and U.S. allies, and you kind of see how complicated the geopolitical situation is. So that's all to say that I disagreed with Brian's point in regards to Ukraine. So I wanted to kind of put that little bit of a disclaimer up at the top, and the reason I didn't really want to get into that debate at that moment, and I'm not even a fan of the word debate. Getting that dialogue with Brian in that moment was primarily because I wanted to kind of keep it focused on the press. I kind of wanted to keep it focused on that subject matter. And I think if we would have gotten into that, into some differences, it would have detracted from some of the things he was saying. So I felt like I wanted to keep it focused on the topic at hand. But I, wanted to clear it up at the top of the show before we dove into the interview as well. So with all of that said and done, without any further ado, let's dive into this interview with author of Free the Press, Brian Karem. Enjoy it, everybody. With this question, since we are in the age of the internet, the digital age, and we've seen journalism kind of evolve in the last century from being from print to radio to television, and now we're in the journalism in the age of the internet. What do you think is the biggest challenge for journalists today when there's so much noise they got to filter through?
The biggest challenge for journalism today is to remain relevant. And to remain relevant, what you have to do as a journalist is to vet your facts. You can no longer worry about being the first on the scene, which is what we still do. We still worry about, we got to get it on the air right now. Well, I guarantee you there's somebody with a cell phone who's standing at the location of the event that's going on that has greater access to it than you do at that particular moment. So give it up. What you're best at is vetting facts and giving undisputed, vetted facts to the public. That's what you have to do.
Which is exactly what journalists are
supposed to do.
Yes, right.
It hasn't changed. But we became so enamored with being first. We became, the real change in journalism did not occur with the advent of the internet or cable TV or television. It occurred with radio in, the 1930s. When radio became popular, that's when the news cycle became much more vicious and much more and quicker. And the pace has not changed. Everything that's happened since the advent of radio has imitated what happened when radio was introduced to the world. And, that was what you saw like in the shuttle disaster in 1986, when CNN became a well-known worldwide because they were the only ones there broadcasting when the shuttle blew up live. And that, the prominence of, oh my God, this is no, there was somebody there on radio when the Zeppelin blew up in New Jersey, and they went like, oh my God, the humanity. That was the change in journalism. So it's not changed, but the challenge has always remained to be relevant and to be factual. And today we're losing that battle.
Yeah, it seems like both society and mainstream journalists don't have the patience for something to develop, and then later we find out, oh man, the stuff that we were reporting wasn't actually true. We found more details, we found more information, and then they have to redact what they said or correct themselves.
Well, we've always had to do that. I mean, I've got copies of newspapers from the Titanic, actual, real newspapers from that era. And the first news headline was Titanic strikes iceberg, everyone's safe and okay. And then, then the next edition is Titanic struck iceberg, a dozen dead, and it's limping into port. And then finally, 3 or 4 days later, you get the full story. And that's just how slow news traveled then. You always have to correct your mistakes. Journalism is the first, draft of history, not the last. So it's not fake media. It's not fake news, as a previous president said. It's just, this is what we do. We're fallible. We get you as much news as we can when we can. Sometimes we're more accurate than others, but you have to stay and constantly update what you're doing. You can't do that today because in many cases there are not even copy editors around. And so you just got reporters out there blowharding and talking into the wind, and people are going, oh, that's full of shit. And they're right. but we don't correct it. That's the problem.
Yeah, the accountability needs to be there as well. I feel like I feel like it's okay. I mean, I've done it. I've made videos or I've said something on a podcast, and then a week later there's information that comes out and I go, oh, well, that was my mistake. I was operating with, X percentage of the information, and now this kind of counters what I said. Whereas I think when CNN makes a mistake or Fox News, you don't really hear them make that kind of a statement. Do you think that's because there is such a lack of trust in corporate media like CNN that they don't want to take that kind of accountability?
I think it's because of a lack of investment in the materials and resources needed to correct mistakes and a reticence to broadcast those for fear that people will see them as being fake news. Where actually it's counterintuitive, but it actually endears a public to you when you come out and you admit a mistake. Ombudsmans and newspapers existed for many years, and they were the ones who went through the news, and then the next day, the day after the news was broken, corrected any mistakes that were made. You need that in journalism. Otherwise, you're just a blogger, just some guy spouting your opinion. And while that's fine, and I support it, that's not journalism.
Right.
Journalism is investigative by nature. The best journalism is investigative by nature, and it takes a while to vet facts. But it's in vetting those facts and going after real news that national and international stories of consequence turn up. Everyone, found out about Flint, Michigan and the water, not because, some national reporter broke it. It's because some local reporter busted ass to go and test water and find out what was going on and follow complaints. We didn't learn about Dursban and chlorpyrifos and dangerous pesticides in this country because it sprouted at the national level. It's because local reporters put together the reports of Dursban poisoning all over in these are organophosphates, and chlorpyrifos is the technical term, and Dursban was the term that Dow Chemical, the brand under which it was sold. But all of those pesticides and the poisoning and organophosphates being in bloodstreams were all coordinated at local levels as people began investigating what's going on in our fields and our streams. And, all of that stuff you don't find out about unless you're an investigative reporter, and investigative reporting is expensive. It's time consuming, and it doesn't make a lot of money. And so the problem is that today's journalism, because of the fact that we're geared toward making money, real journalism has suffered.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you. Is the corporate influence within
Mm-hmm.
journalism? As you mentioned, there is what is it, 6 corporation that owns like 90%?
When I first got when I got into this business, 80% of what you see, read, or hear was owned by about 24 companies. Today, 6 companies own more than 90% of what you see, read, or hear. You got to bust up the media monopolies. You got to stress independent journalism. You got to untether journalism from capitalism. And I am a firm believer in capitalism. My book's called Free the Press. Go out, buy it early, buy it often, buy as many copies as you want. I support that. But journalism as an industry should not be tied to public demand, because in that case, if you are merely supplying what people demand, they usually demand what satisfies them. So you get news that you like and news that already speaks to your predisposition rather than news that you need and will open your eyes to facts you were unaware of. That's the problem.
Yeah, it brings up the argument of what should be tied to corporate and private interests versus what shouldn't be. And journalism is meant for the public good, so tying it to corporate interests doesn't really make any sense.
No, and also when you do that, I mean, look, you're also indicting the public. This is an indictment of the public at large. If people bitch about, it's too far to the right, it's too far to the left. No, the people in the boardrooms that own companies do not care whether it's left or right. They only care about money. So it's what you want to see, read, or hear. I guarantee you that if the American public wanted real, in-depth, hard reporting, we'd give it to you. We'd sell it to you in a heartbeat, because that would make us money. But it doesn't. And that it doesn't make us money, so we don't do it. They're very, and the problem is it actually could make us money. It was, Edward R. Murrow said we're a very imitative society, and that if we don't change what we do, it's going to end up with us, merely printing or spouting propaganda and slogans. Hello, that was in 1958 when he said that. That's been 64 years ago. He was eerily prescient in what his condemnation of American journalism, and he was right. And so if you want to create better journalism, maybe indeed there is a demand. There certainly seems to be a demand for it. And if someone did it right, then perhaps it would sell and others would catch on. Barring that, and I don't see any kind of, strength in or heroism or strength of character in the journalistic community among owners to try that. You have to untether journalism from capitalism in order for it to be done correctly.
Yeah, the politicizing of journalism, where by saying, well, CNN is a liberal source and Fox News is a conservative source. Is that more? It doesn't seem like it's more of a recent thing. How far back? Can you
go back to the
that?
founding of the republic.
Yeah.
Each you go back to the 1780s. I mean, there were newspapers that were publishing that Thomas Jefferson was, had concubines and slaves, and it turned out they were right, and that Adams was doing a bunch of, and he was anti-American. And I mean, each party, beginning with Adams and Jefferson and the big split that gave us a two-party system. Going back to that, we had newspapers that printed specific political news geared towards a certain audience, and that paid the bills. And so the golden age of journalism, which I don't agree that to that term, but the golden age of journalism is seen when we divorced ourselves from the politicians and began selling advertising. And that to me is ridiculous. We're just one step removed. There were, sacred cows. You can't talk about, Procter and Gamble because they advertise in our newspaper. That's the problem. It's always been a problem. It's more exacerbated now than ever because the guardrails that were put up to protect, the public and make sure that journalism was done correctly have been removed. And that's one of the, multiple ownership. There are companies today in the United States that run media that have more power than nations because of their ability to get out messaging. That needs to change.
Yeah, I agree. That was always one of those things. That's why it's almost but like I gravitated more because I was watching like CNN and MSNBC and NPR when I was in college, and then as in my 20s is around when I started gravitating more towards independent journalists and more investigative reporting, because it just seemed more, I hate that I'm gonna say this, it seemed more fair and balanced. Right, but they were doing what you're talking about. They were putting the time and effort to investigate the stories and get all the details and vet their sources rather than just jump in and it's gonna be first.
Sometimes what's fair and accurate won't even appear to be that way. For example, they demand equal time for every issue. I'm sorry, I'm not giving equal time to Holocaust deniers. The Holocaust is a fact. Get over it. I'm not giving equal time to those who say that the world is flat. The world isn't. Get over it. I'm not giving equal time to the morons who say that we never landed on the moon. We did. Get over it. The sun rises in the east. It sets in the west. Those are facts. There are certain facts that I'm not giving equal time to. However, there are other issues that are multifaceted and have more than two sides. A journalist is someone with the experience to understand the difference between the two and to promote factual reporting based on multiple sources of facts. I'm sorry, that's a journalist. And we're in short supply these days because the constriction in the news media business has led to lower profits and led to lower investment in product. So today, when I walk into the White House, I'm a senior reporter there. I'm one of the oldest guys in the room. There are people that come up to me. Their first job in journalism is the White House. It's the toughest beat to cover. You have to have some experience to be in there. And yet we have people without any experience in there asking the dumbest, damn questions I've ever heard in my life, and being called upon to do it. So it's a circus. Today's press room is an ungodly circus, and it's as much the the administration's fault as journalists' fault. The administration, makes hay off of it, or thinks they do, and journalists don't really care because they don't know to care. I'm getting a ride on Air Force One. The food is great. I won't cause any problems. It's like, look, I've been on Air Force One. The food is nice, and it's great to travel on it once. After that, you're still in the back of the aircraft. They're still feeding you a bunch of shit, and nobody cares. And you still have to hike it around the goddamn jet engines and smell the jet engine fuel when you get off. There's nothing glamorous about that detail. The food's nice, but I can get that kind of decent food at any restaurant that I go to. I'm not kissing anybody's ass to get on Air Force One. Yet there are people who think they're as important as a president because they get to travel on Air Force One. And I got news for you. Nobody will remember them. Nobody cares about them. They will be unsung in the annals of history because they have gone along to get along. Fuck them. Is that blunt enough?
Yeah, I feel like that's getting the point across. Yeah, but this is the notion of access journalism, right? Let's play nice with politicians rather than challenge them.
It's all about access today.
Yeah, and that's not the point of journalism. It's not just to get the access. You're supposed to challenge politicians. I'm curious to know, when you face these politicians like Trump, for example, when you ask them about the peaceful transition of power, and you really didn't get an answer. He kind of kept circulating around the ballots, so the ballots are a problem. How do you, as just a person, because reading that is frustrating to me, how do you keep your cool in that sort of a situation? Because I'm sure that's not the first time that you've dealt with a politician kind of giving you the runaround.
No, they all give you the runaround. Some of them just run you around more than others. No, look, they've got their job to do. The White House is going to put their best foot forward. That's their job. My job is to call bullshit. Mm-hmm. So that's my job. I don't take it personally. And those who mean it personally, I still don't take it personally because I don't know them personally, don't care to know them personally. I'm not inviting them over to my house for a barbecue at the end of the afternoon. I'm not going to go drink a beer with them. I don't fucking care about them. My job is to get the information. Now, you can make it difficult or you can make it nice. I don't care. I'm still going to get what I need to get. And so, it's those who think, I can keep you away from the information. No, you can't. Because I guarantee you there's somebody in your administration who doesn't like you or has an axe to grind, and they'll talk to me. They usually seek me out. So, and I can get any amount of information that I need to at any point in time. I know what I'm doing. So go screw yourself. If you want to play that kind of access, I've told many a politician, you can go down nice or you can go down nasty. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, the frustration that I see from a lot of, and I feel like it's a lot of younger journalists that do seem to get a little bit more frustrated. It is a personalization because
they're always looking for zingers. I'm going to zing you. Well, I want a real question and a real answer and a real discussion. And the press briefing room is not built for that. It's built for the zinger, and it's built for, now I've gotten in my fair share, but never because I was aiming for the one that everyone points to is September 23rd of 2020, sitting in a briefing room. And I asked, Trump, win, lose, or draw, will he accept a peaceful transfer of power? I wasn't trying to zing him. I really wanted to know. I mean, that's, I was shocked at his answer, well, we'll have to see. If you quit counting the ballots, I win. Yeah, no shit, fucker. That's not an answer. That's scary. He told you right then and there about the insurrection. It was on. He didn't want to leave office and had no plans of going gentle into that good night. Well, it's not my question that was the zinger. It was his answer. It was his lack of answer. So, I've asked plenty of questions over the years that I think are important. And what I try to remember is that what does the average person sitting at home want answered? And I try to ask that question. I'm not trying to bait them. Oh, you said this on this day, and you said this on this day. Were you lying then? Were you lying now? Would you like to tell a new lie? How are the lies in your, shut the fuck up. Just give me an honest question and follow it up if you have an answer that doesn't answer the question, which is most of the time. And also if you need to clarify points, which most of the time.
Which is also most of the time.
Yeah.
Right. But for kind of average people that are that don't have time to delve into, they're kind of looking for like quicker historical breakdowns and things of that sort. How do you kind of break through, what you hear on corporate media that winds up being more towards state propaganda, right? How do you kind of realize what that is, and where can they go to kind of combat the propaganda that comes out of corporate media?
If it smells like bullshit, it probably is. And question everything until there's a source. I've had people tell me, well, I watch the briefings on TV, so what do I need someone who's in the room for? I go, you don't get it. You're once removed. I'm there. There is a huge difference between witnessing an event and between seeing it on TV. There's a big difference between witnessing history firsthand and being 3 steps removed from it. If somebody tells you, I've had reporters who've worked for me who've come to me and said, look, this is what I think. And I tell them, I don't give a shit what you think. I barely care what I think. What do you know? Check facts. And if they tell you something, well, some people say, well, who are those people? If you're reading a news article that doesn't cite sources, if you're listening to someone on TV telling you what they think, like, I can't watch. Last night I watched the I watched the State of the Union address, and I didn't watch the beginning or the end with all the pontification from pundits who were telling me what the fuck they thought. I don't care I'm in the goddamn room with a guy. What do I need you to tell me what you think the most important things are? I want to listen to the guy and assess it myself. And if people were more of that mind, right, that mindset, I will listen to what, the president says, and I can assess for myself whether it's believable or not. That's a good first step. Instead of listening to the pontification of pundits who have no idea of what they're talking about and are only more tangentially related to it than you. There's no one of the gravitas of Walter Cronkite in today's mainstream media. No one. There's no one of his experience. Make a judgment for yourself. I mean, one of the reasons why we trusted Walter Cronkite wasn't because he said, that's the way it is. It's because Walter Cronkite had a great deal of experience and gravitas. And when he did offer an opinion, as he did on the Vietnam War after doing a 2-hour documentary that sunk LBJ and led to him not running for office in 1968, when that happened, he knew he had lost Middle America because Walter Cronkite had an opinion that reflected facts. And he gave you 2 hours of those facts before he offered an opinion saying, and he said, in this reporter's opinion, this is not a war that can be won, but one that we will have to negotiate an end to. Now, that was huge. If any anchor on television today came on and said that, you'd laugh at him and just go, you're a fucking idiot. What do you know? And that's, for example, when I first walked into the White House, the very first time I walked into it, I met Helen Thomas and Sam Donaldson, Sam I had known for about a year. And Sam gave me some advice. He said, Brian, take a look at that first row there in the Brady briefing room. Those 7 seats, there's probably 200 and some odd years experience in there. And he said, listen to every one of them. Then he told me that, Helen Thomas had about 190 years of it. And Helen made a joke at Sam's expense. And Sam said, Helen, it's okay to have an unexpressed thought. And Helen said, Sam, when it comes to you, I have a lot of unexpressed thoughts. And I was laughing and enjoyed it. But truth be known, today in that first row in the Brady briefing room, if there's 50 years of experience, I'd be surprised. That's the loss of experience in the press has led to a lack of trust in what we do and say. And that's because you don't trust people that don't have the experience and don't know what they're talking about.
Do you feel like anybody in corporate media today has that kind of experience, or
Well,
I guess, yeah,
I
go.
think that type of experience has fled because we don't get paid for it anymore. There's very few of us who are making, adequate money to pay our bills in mainstream media. I mean, they're hiring kids straight out of college and paying them $35,000 a year to be White House reporters. Please. How do you survive on that in Washington, D.C.?
Oof.
I mean, that you might be able to pay for parking, but I mean, you can't pay for a car or a home or a dental or health or I don't know, rent. That's ridiculous. So
Not in DC.
It's driven down the quality of people that you get in that room. And I don't see any way around that unless you bring up prices and hire decent people.
So yeah, is there a solution to the 24-hour media cycle though, or do you think that
I like the 24-hour media cycle, but I don't like the people presenting the news to us.
The personality aspect of,
not even the personality, lack of it. I don't care. I give everybody their personality. I may not like the son of a bitch, but if he's doing the job right, I respect it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Because that's something like someone like Julian Assange that's always levied against him is oh, well, I don't personally like him. Well, it doesn't matter. Did he reveal war crimes or did he not reveal war crimes is the real question.
Right.
And that's what it boils down to me is, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna like him. I've never hung out with Julian Assange. I've never had a beer with him, but I do know the work that he's done, and I do know the information that he's put out there. And that I think that's goes back to the indictment of the public a little bit, is the trust they put into even independent journalists. I think revolves more around personality and kind of the entertainment value they get from that reporting.
Well, today, yes, today journalism is infotainment. It's very little journalism and a lot of entertainment. I mean, when I first got into business, I remember going to IRE, investigative reporters and editors, who had, they had annual conferences. And the first year I went to one of their annual conferences, we were talking about investigating the quality of water, your electricity, our inspectors, building inspectors cutting corners, shit that matters to everybody. I remember a few years later going and we were talking about how to investigate whether or not you're getting enough cheese on your pizza. I mean, really? I mean, I can look at it and go, that's not enough cheese on my pizza. Could you put a little more? That's a tough investigation, but that's where we headed and that's where we're going. And that's, people want to, oh my God, did I get, who got voted off the island? Oh my God, who's the, and we get news based on who got voted off the island. I don't give a shit on the day when right now, when we're talking about, are we or aren't we involved in World War III in Ukraine? On that day, on today, there'll be one or two articles on that. And then the rest of it is, which is better, the MCU universe or DC? Or, why Hawkeye isn't in, the metaverse? And who the fuck cares? I like fiction as much as anyone else, but I don't want to go to my news and read, who's going to, is Tom Cruise going to be the new Iron Man in the metaverse? I don't give a shit. If it shows up, I'll watch it. I would like to know that 6 weeks from now, that the world is still going to exist and we haven't nuked ourselves into oblivion. That's the news.
Yeah. And to answer your question, it's the MCU. The MCU is far superior, obviously.
Oh, obviously.
We have lots of facts to prove that point.
Except for Batman. I like Batman.
Yeah, I have a little bit of Batman fatigue at the moment, which I'm still going to go watch the Robert Pattinson one, but I'm going to the matinee. I'm not paying full price.
I used to freak out my kids a lot when they were little. I'd walk up to them. This is after the original Batman came out with Michael Keaton. And they go, I go, come here, son. I got something to tell you. He goes, what? I go, I'm Batman. And then I'd show him, I go into the attic and go, there's my bat cave.
But you're right. I think that's exactly kind of the thing that you see on CNN or MSNBC is, and it's
All of
not a
them.
nuanced perspective. It's not understanding all of the players that, helped us land in this crisis. And I'm seeing that. I was actually ranting to a friend of mine, and this is my fault. I engaged somebody on Twitter, and I shouldn't have done that. And
There
I
you
was,
go.
I was frustrated because I'm sitting there going, well, you're not considering all of the perspectives. You're kind of only doing the mainstream media talking points where it's just Putin bad, Putin evil, Russia bad, and it feels like we're back in the Cold War.
No, we're look, this Putin is bad.
Absolutely.
Putin is,
I'm not disagreeing with that.
And what the problem is we don't have the fundamental understanding in the press to understand how bad it is. This is worse than the Cold War. This is the largest war in Europe since the end of World War II. And the question remains, how do you talk Putin out of his tree?
Right.
So he doesn't end up, because Biden said even last night, you touch a NATO asset, game on. Well, in the fog of war, even if you don't intend to touch an asset that belongs to NATO, you may well do it. And the scenario under which that is possible, they call it the fog of war. We don't want to get dragged into the fog. It's a volatile situation. There's no way to determine accurately what's going to happen. But you have every nation in the world saying we're going to strengthen Ukraine. There's only one way to make that happen today, and that's through Poland. Those are the supply routes into the interior of that country. How do you cut off the supply routes from Poland? If one Russian soldier steps 1 foot into Poland or one stray missile lands in Poland, it is game on, world over, and you better have a rated 3000 sunblock to get you through it. It's not going to end well. And so it's trying to get Putin not to do that. That is the biggest, and so far the greatest bit of hope that we have is the Western coalition in NATO, which Trump tried to destroy and that Biden has tried to rebuild. And him saying and seeing what Germany did over the weekend by advancing the cause of restrictions and sanctions against Russia. We're effectively trying to choke the bear to death before the bear runs over Europe. The problem is whenever you strangle, if you've got a sewer rat cornered in an alley, that sewer rat will fight. And that's the fear. How do you strangle them without getting them to fight? How do you anesthetize them so that we don't end up in World War III? Those who don't understand that continue to think it's a game. And they play it like it's a game. And our media, unknowing of how the past is, it's being ignorant of our own past. You have reporters in that briefing room going, do you think this will mean a permanent establishment of American troops in Europe? Well, we've had a permanent establishment of troops in Europe since the end of, I don't know, World War II.
Yeah.
Or do you think this will end up in a real war? This is a real war.
Yeah.
What's the red line in the sand? Well, he's already told us what the red line in the sand. Don't fuck with NATO. We'll shoot your ass. It's pretty blatant. And we have ignored facts because we don't understand them. We have children in the briefing room. We're not helping the understanding of this issue through our press today. And that's unfortunate, frightening, and ultimately can lead to far worse circumstances than we're in now.
Yeah, because I mean the information that's going to come out is what people are going to go by and support an escalation of the war or support more peaceful resolutions. And that's the thing is I don't have a solution for this, but I'm also kind of I am being a little critical of both sides here, but I'm not for war. And I don't think there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, yay war, because
I don't see anyone is saying yay war except Putin, who's a madman with his finger on the nuclear button. Is this a game? Is this a stratagem to get Ukraine to remain neutral, which they don't want to do. It's a stratagem. He has said he wants to return the former power of the Soviet Union. If that's the case, there are NATO nations today that used to be part of the Soviet Union. So that's frightening, and take that seriously.
Yeah.
But who wants war? No. I mean, the Chinese don't want war. They've got investments in Canada and the United States. If we go boom, they lose. And here's the thing, I had a reporter say to me, I don't know if we could win a nuclear war. No shit, Sherlock. No one wins a nuclear war. It's called mutually assured destruction. You pull the trigger, we pull the trigger, we're all dead. And if you don't understand that, you shouldn't be in the fucking White House.
Have you seen Dr. Strangelove? That's
yes. Well, yeah, no kidding. Right. But to your point about being critical, it's the depth of criticism on each side. Are you critical of what Biden has done in response to Putin? Yeah, you could take some criticism of, did he do this right? Is he strong enough? Is it should they have imposed sanctions earlier? Did we not know what was going on? Apparently, we knew pretty well what was going on in Russia because, I don't know, Biden announced it, a week before it happened. This is what's going to happen, folks. And he's going to lie and create a false flag. And by God, that's what he did. That's one level of criticism. Criticism of Putin being a narcissistic, heathen son of a bitch with his finger on the button, being a madman. That's a different level of criticism. All criticism isn't equal. And you should be able to, and people should be smart enough to understand the difference therein. If you're saying by being critical of both that you're not taking sides, I think anyone can be critical of both and still take a side. It's like, sure, I may not like what Biden's doing all the way. Who does? But you got to side with the guy trying to end a war rather than the guy trying to start a war. And anybody in this country who sides with Putin is not only not a patriot, they're a traitor. And not only that, they're suicidal. That's just plain fucking nuts.
Yeah. I have one more question that I want to ask you that maybe this is, I don't know if there is an answer. I'm curious to see if you have this answer or not, but you've kind of seen
weed is always the answer.
Weed is always the answer. That is true. That is true. Anyway. I feel like if we get everybody in NATO and everybody Putin and Zelensky high in a room, I feel like would solve that conflict.
Get them laid and get them high, and that would solve the world's problems.
Peace. I feel like everybody should. That's the solution, Brian.
Details at 11.
Which strain is right for you?
Yeah. Gorilla panic.
Yeah.
Or they're coming, or it's permanent. So yeah.
My dog, but the dog apparently likes Gorilla Panic. I don't know if you can hear him or not, but he's a fan of the Gorilla Panic. Right terpenes for him.
There you go. So what's the question?
I want to ask you, you've seen the way the press is handled. Hold on 1 second. Lucky, there's no one in vain. It's okay. Hey.
Lucky's fine by me. I have to introduce him to Archie.
Yeah, there's an old man walking past my house, and he's gonna freak out now. Sorry, I apologize for the dog freaking out.
I have dogs. Don't worry. It's all good.
And now he knows that he's not supposed to be in the office, and he's gonna leave. Okay. So I want to ask you. You've seen the way the press has been treated under Nixon, under Obama, Clinton, Bush, both the Bushes. Do you see at Reagan, Trump? Do you see a difference in the treatment of the press between Democrats and Republicans, or is it kind of similar?
Well, I've always said we have two parties in this country. One is of no heart and one has no head. So the Democrats have no head. The Republicans have no heart. They treat the press differently, but also the same. They all try to control the message. How they do it is different, but they're always trying to control the message so that they put their best foot forward, and that's fine. And I'm always trying to call them on their bullshit. Both of them are full of shit. However, one is more dangerous and one is more venomous and one is more toxic. That toxic shit belongs to Trump and the Republican Party. The innocuous shit that just smells bad and makes you go, God, change your diaper, is the Democratic Party. They do not communicate very well. They think they know everything, and they try very hard to impress upon you how superior they are in their mindset. The Republicans merely want to burn everybody down around them. And if they could do what Putin does and eliminate those who disagree with him, they would do so. So it's a matter of nuance, it's a matter of degree, but all political parties bullshit the press and the public. One is better at it than the other, and one is more venomous than the other.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer to that question. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Where can people find your book, and how can people purchase a copy of your book, which I think is an important book, especially in today's day and age?
The book is called Free the Press. It's available wherever fine books are sold. You can also find it on the internet at Amazon.com and independentbooksellers.com. The podcast is called Just Ask the Question, where we interview people and just ask them questions about the press, politics, and any event going on today. And you read the column at salon.com. Every Thursday it comes out. So that's where you can find me. And thanks for having me on the show. And as I said earlier, buy the book early, buy it often.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
And that is our conversation with Brian Karem. Excuse me there. Grab his book. It's called Free the Press. Free the Press, available wherever you get books or ebooks from. So grab a copy of that book today. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, there were certain points in regards to the subject of Ukraine that Brian and I disagreed with, and again, I didn't feel like I wanted to push back on that too much, because I wanted to keep our conversation focused on the topic of the press, of journalism, and not detract away from it, because I think it's an important topic. It's especially in today's society, how we view journalism and how journalists are the issues that journalists face in our society. Especially in a quote post-truth society, right? So I wanted to kind of keep us focused on that subject at hand. But if you want really, really great information from this podcast in regards to the Ukrainian crisis, I kind of gave my initial thoughts of the Ukrainian crisis a few weeks ago. And I also interviewed Ben Norton in regards to some of the history of U.S. interference and the Nazis and the Ukrainian National Guard. That interview is available on this podcast as well. So go check those out. Those are excellent resources. Other resources that I think are very good for understanding the context of what's going on in Ukraine and why there are no good guys in this situation. Breakthrough News, they've been doing a really good job. Brian Becker at the Socialist Program does a really great job kind of exploring the history of all this stuff and providing a lot of context that is missing in corporate media. Lee Camp has done a really great job of covering this stuff from a comedic perspective, which I always appreciate. Graham Elwood and Ron Placone, also dear friends of mine, but take on a comedic perspective of this. Abby Martin does a great job talking about this. Aaron Mate does a great job talking about this. Ben Norton, I mentioned, Multipolarista. They've been doing a great job talking about this. Richard Medhurst, coming at it from a really anti-war, anti-imperialist perspective that can be critical of Russia and NATO expansion. That's sort of the perspective that I think is very important. That's sort of the perspective that I think is going to give us the most amount of facts and the most amount of understanding in a very complicated situation where there are no good guys. Who am I missing? People's Dispatch, Vijay Prashad has done a really great job covering this and kind of unpacking some of the the details in regards to this and sort of what's going on in the West. And I'm working on a piece myself, kind of bringing my thoughts to the table and addressing it also kind of in a with a little bit of a mental health perspective as well, because there's a lot of toxic conversations and it surrounds kind of a nationalist fog that I think a lot of Americans end up getting caught up in. So I want to kind of go through and really address it from that perspective, and so I'm working on that piece, and it's been a little bit of a challenge because every day it's a new nightmare with this situation. So every time I feel like I'm ready to publish it, something else happens that I need to address and tweak and adjust my points accordingly. So I will be putting that out soon, though, because I want to get these thoughts out there. And next week also, I hope you guys will tune into next week's podcast, because I am going to kind of talk about the future of content creation for me, the future of comedy for me, and what I'm looking forward to personally, and some of the changes that are going to be coming on my end. So I hope you guys will stay tuned to that. And with all that said and done, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and we'll see you on the road. Stay taboo, everybody. Bye, guys.